What's up, guys? This is Mike Casu. This is the brUTE Strength Podcast. I got Matt Bruce, my co-host, and Coach Gail Hatch. I'm going to let Matt tell you a little bit about Coach's history real quick. The accolades are way longer than I know.
Yeah, so Coach actually started in the 60s. He started with a AAU basketball team after he finished playing in the ABA, which eventually folded into the NBA. He came back home after playing with the Globetrotters for a couple of years. His mentor was a guy named Alvin Roy. Alvin Roy is arguably the first ever strength coach, definitely the first strength coach in the NFL, but arguably the first ever collegiate strength coach with the amount of experience that he had with the LSU team back in the 50s. So Coach Hatch got back home. He started coaching an AAU basketball team, and he noticed at the gym some people were doing some Olympic weightlifting, and he did that his whole career, coming up from high school to the collegians to the pros. And he said, hey guys, I can kind of help y'all out with that. You know, I learned from Alvin. And so out of that little YMCA there off of Foster Drive, he started a little weightlifting team. And then from there he kind of moved around. And then eventually Alvin Roy went off into the pros to become a strength coach for the San Diego Chargers, right, Coach?
That's right, San Diego Chargers,
yeah, became
correct.
the first ever NFL strength coach, and then kind of passed the lineage down to Hatch. And Hatch continued. He first had a powerlifting team and then an Olympic weightlifting team, right?
That's right, yeah.
He had two teams, and then he kind of fell more in love with the Olympic weightlifting side. He has done this now for, I don't even know how many years, Coach. How many years?
Oh, my God. Well, I guess it's over 40.
Over 40 years at an elite level Olympic coach. His team has earned 47?
Well, Matt, it's up to 54 now.
I guess since I retired, he earned a couple more.
Right.
54 national championship teams he has coached. So a lot of times you walk into a gym, you'll see one or two banners on the wall saying that they won the 1984 USA Weightlifting Senior Nationals. You walk into Coach Hatch's, and he has over 50 banners of the national championship teams that he helped coach. And I'm sure you're going to say that, well, they hadn't been 50 years, but this is including what, Coach?
It's junior and senior teams winning these national championships. And we start these young kids out maybe 12 or 13 years old, like we did yourself, and they compete in the junior competition, and then we bring them on, the ones that are dedicated and have the potential, into the senior or open division. And then those ones that have got the potential to do that, then we try to get them on these international teams. And we've had representation on 4 U.S. Olympic teams. And we had Tommy Calandra in 1984. We had Brett Bryan in 1988 and 1992. And then I was the head coach of the 2004 Olympic team. And then we had the Olympic squad. We had Blair Lebrano and Matt Bruce here.
Who had the highest Sinclair out of all your athletes?
Well, actually, pound for pound, the greatest lifter I ever had was Matt Bruce.
Oh, shit.
And he's, if you didn't know that,
I did.
then there's something slipping, because he will let you know in a heartbeat.
but Coach, explain to him, though, I might be the number one in the Sinclair, but I'm not number one out there.
No.
He has knocked me down all the way to number 5 now.
Yeah. The most successful lifter would be Brett Bryan, because he has 2 Olympic teams. But, you know, each one of them were successful in different ways. Tommy Calandra, when he made the Olympic team in 1984, there were only 2 from Louisiana, native-born Louisianans, to make it, and that was him and a great female basketball player by the name of Kim Mulkey, who led Louisiana Tech to the Women's National Championship. People get confused. They hear about a lot of Olympians off of the LSU track team, but those people are not really from Baton Rouge. In fact, they're not even from this country. They're from recruited from out of the country. So to be a true Olympian from the state of Louisiana, and especially Baton Rouge, is very, very rare. And when I tell these guys, you become an Olympian, it's not like you get a lot of cash right then, but for the rest of your life, your name is Olympian Tommy Calandra, Olympian Brett Bryan, and so forth. And it opens a lot of door for your personal business.
Absolutely.
But the thing I'm most proud of, and what coaches say, is that it's the type of young man that we develop out of this program. They come out with character and productive citizens, and that means more to me than anything. We've got, to give you an example, Matt is starting off gangbusters. He's going to be very successful, and when I retire, he's going to take over as head coach of the Gail Hatch weightlifting team.
So I'm curious, are there any principles that you can articulate, like things that you think about, I want to instill this, and this in my athletes, or is it just kind of a natural thing for you?
No, it's we want to teach these kids while I'm developing their talent as an athlete. We want to develop character. We want them to know about values and responsibilities and how to get along with coaches, how to get along with people, and how to be successful as an American citizen. And so that's ongoing from the day you first step in this door. And I've had a dress code for years and years. You don't walk in here with earrings and a do-rag. You can put that on outside those the hatch walls, but in here you don't. I mean, one of my favorite athletes I ever trained was Warwick Dunn. Trained him for all 12 years of his pro career and 4 years in the off season in college. And I remember when he signed his contract worth $40 million, he still didn't wear earrings or do-rags in here. And pretty much what my Olympians or what Matt brUTE will tell you, you come in, you show up, and you say yes sir and no sir, and what's next, and put 110% effort into the workout, and you're going to become successful. So that's what this program is all about, and always will be. I mean, I'd rather have somebody like, Blair became the first lifter to beat a Russian in, I think it was 25 years. But I'd rather have a lifter place fourth at the World Championships and be clean of steroids than to cheat and take steroids and get a medal. And that's just the way I feel about it.
Where does that come from? I think
Well, it comes from my dad, I'm telling you. Where I was born in Muskogee, Oklahoma, on a ranch. My dad was Indian, my mother was Irish. And he was tough on me, really demanding on me. And, a cattle spread is not easy to run. But he started me as a young man with responsibilities that I had to do. And that was a big, big help. I think about him every day that I pound this platform. Mm-hmm. I think about my dad, and my mom was the greatest fan I ever had. And they just really... gave me the foundation that I needed to move on.
Right. Something I find really interesting, I've heard you say it countless times, and I've even heard Matt say it now a handful of times, where you find these kids that go on to be super successful. I've heard Matt use the phrase, I knew immediately that this kid has the potential to be an Olympian, or something to that effect. And I've heard you say that about Matt, about some of your other lifters. What are the things that tell you, okay, this kid has the potential to be an Olympian? Physically,
well, first we're going to look, playing basketball did not make Shaq 7'2". And a lot of people ask me, does weightlifting stunt your growth? Well, no. You go into the sport that you have the correct body type for. So if I look at Matt brUTE when he first comes to me, and I see this body structure that Matt is born with is perfect for an Olympic lifter. And then I put him through a few basic exercises to check his flexibility out. Mm-hmm. Then the only thing left to do is to find out, what does he have in his heart? what is he going to take? Is he the kind of kid that's going to do this through high school and then stop, or go to college and then stop? Or is he going to be willing to do like all of my Olympians and world team members, put in 10, 12 years of grueling hard work? And my program is extremely tough because we do it without steroids. So when we started out, we had to beat America was on steroids too. There was no drug testing for American lifters. So we had to beat the lifters that were on drugs back then. And finally in 1990, I got the USAW Board of Directors to pass my suggestion that all members of the national and junior national teams be drug tested out of competition. So Matt, for instance, had to give them a list where he would be every minute of the day. So they could show up here and say, Matt, we're going to test you. Or he could show up, they could show up at his house. And that helped cleaned up a lot in the United States. But we're still shooting BBs against bullets over there with the Russians and the Bulgarians and those people. But I never let my lifters use that as a crutch. I say, and we're going to make the best Olympic weightlifter out of you as we can, drug-free. And I'll fight the steroid battle behind the scenes. And so that's always been my philosophy.
So what do you think it's going to take to make America competitive again without going back?
Well, I think that we have got to get that blood testing going, you see. We can get that. And I know there's been a lot of lawsuits about it. And
blood testing at the Olympics,
at the Olympics, at the trials in America, at these home countries. The International Weightlifting Federation has to have a policy of showing up at a Russian meet, Bulgarian meet, United States meet, test these athletes. And if we can do that and get that going for about 4 years or so, then I think you're going to start seeing that the lifts are going to start coming down, and it's going to be to give us a chance to get up there and compete with them.
And I really have no idea how realistic is that.
Well, you know, it's just the fact that, you know, I got a lot of pit bull persistence. So as long as I can draw a breath, I'm going to always fight it. And if I see somebody that's not on the board of directors that I don't think is really doing all he can, then he's going to be hearing from me. And we're going to keep doing what we do. We have an environment here that brings kids in the first day, and I can show them these pictures of Matt and the rest of the Olympians on the wall and say, now you can see it can be done, you know, the right way. It's hatroids, not steroids. In other words, smart, intelligent training. But the athlete has to meet you halfway. Matt Bruce had to stay in lockstep with me for all those years, and that's not always easy. I'm a tough and demanding coach, and when you come over here, Matt never had to worry about, I wonder what kind of mood his coach Hatch is going to be in today. That never even entered his mind. He knew if he came in here and gave me 110%, he'd get a Coach Hatch handshake. If he comes in here and gives me 95%, you know, I'm going to have some words to say to him. And if he messes up too bad, then he's going to hear the worst thing in the world. Matt, come in here, I want to have a closed door session with you.
Yeah, and we come from a very old school mentality with Coach Hatch. No music was allowed in the gym.
Right.
If a group of more than 2 kids were standing and talking, Coach would definitely break that up. Everything was yes sir, no sir, what's next, and we would be pounding in here for 3 to 4 hours a day, and just not even really talking amongst each other. Everybody had their own platform.
That's
and
right.
Coach was like a shark. Coach would just walk around the whole platform and make his rounds. And when you saw Coach coming up to your platform, you knew it was your turn to lift.
Yeah.
And then you waited, you loaded your next weight, and when you saw him coming back around again, you took your next lift, and Coach would just pound the platform for 5-6 hours a day, every day, go home and do it again next day.
And that
was a very good
increases
description
focus
at Matt. Yeah.
Removes every distraction, right?
Absolutely.
Then you come in here and you're just focused on
That's
lifting.
it. That's exactly right. That's where your focus and that's where your concentration is. You know, we don't have time for you stand and get in a conversation with the guy next to you or whatever. And you better be ready. When I hit Matt's station, he knows I'm coming, so he's going to be ready for me to lift. Well, if I go 2 stations down and the guy may be a newer lifter and he's not ready for me to supervise him, boom, I'm moving on to the next lifter, and he's left without me supervising.
Right.
Well, it don't take but 1 trip or 2 at the most. He's going to figure out, I better be ready when coach comes my way, or he's not going to supervise me.
Right.
And so they learn, and they look at these leaders. They look up to these guys that's been successful, and it sees what they're doing and what they've done to become successful.
And you create a culture where everyone just acts like that. So when someone new comes in, they just
Absolutely.
know that's how it's done.
That's exactly right. It's absolutely something I can point out. There's a lot of coaches in the country that I call trip coaches. They'll put in for every trip there is, and but
What do you mean by trip?
Well, they like to put in for these international trips, like if they're going out of the country or something. I don't know. They might have a lifter. They might not even have a lifter, but they'll put in for that job. And but what they like is when they see a Coach Hatch athlete coming, because they know Matt's going to present him with an envelope, and inside that envelope is written down all of his warm-up attempts and his starting attempt and the snatch and the clean and jerk, and it's going to have my name down at the bottom. So there's not going to be any arguing what it is.
Right.
And after they get that first attempt in, then the coach has to kind of take over and look and see himself what to make those. But getting those warm-ups right and getting those first attempts are in, because it's it's not what you start with, it's what you finish with. But if you start too heavy, you could bomb out, and then that not only hurts you, but it hurts the USA team too.
Right.
And so they really like that. And there's a lot, because they get a lot of guys that the guy will just stand there and argue with him about what he's going to start with and this and that and then that kind of stuff. Well, that's because of lack of discipline back home from his personal coach that hasn't trained him. Mm-hmm. Look, when you go there, so-and-so is the personal coach on this trip. You're going to pay attention to him, give him the information I sent to him, and then it's going to be automatic for you because we've done it so much.
What are your top 3 tricks at meets? I saw you brushing off. It might have been you were sweeping the platform.
There's lots of things that you can do. You can if you want to get more time. Say your lifter just hit a heavy lift, okay, and he follows himself. Well, he's got 2 minutes, but the lift that he just took out there, he missed, and he needs this to win the national championship or Goodwill Games. And so I will get him over there, and I'll talk to him, and first I motivate him and say, look, Brett, you're going to be fully recovered. Just think how hard we train at home. Mm-hmm. By the time, you can't even see right now, but in 2 minutes, you're going to be clear-eyed, and you're going to be able to go up there, and you're going to be able to hit that winning lift. And so while they're doing that, and if it gets down to a certain point, I say, well, hold it just a second, timekeeper. And I say, you go out to the platform and say, this area here is slippy. Can we get this brushed off or what? Well, then that adds some more seconds for the rest time. And then when they do that, and I make sure they do it slow.
Yeah.
And then
you'll go out there and do it.
Right.
I've seen it.
So then when we step off, then the clock starts there, but that's giving him extra time. Then I'll give him a couple of key little words, and it's instructions. When Matt goes out to the platform, you don't hear the crowd at all. Mm-hmm. You got one ear open. You got one ear open, and that's me standing in the coaching box, and I'm going to give some key little hints to you. Like if it gets close to the 30-second, there's a buzzer. Well, if it gets down to 33 seconds, I'm going to say, the buzzer's going to ring, Matt. And so I don't want him lifting while the buzzer's going up.
Right.
So he'll let the buzzer go off, then he'll approach
Okay.
the platform, and then he's got plenty of time to get set, and I'll give him one last key phrase, and then boom, he'll hit the lift. And then there's other things when you're warming. You give a starting attempt. You tell Matt what to put down for your starting attempt. Within time might go on, and I really had another number intended for a starting attempt. So we get going, everybody's looking and this and that, and it's getting close and this and that. Then I walk up to the people in the back, said, well, I'm going to change Matt Bruce's starting attempt to this weight. And so then they have to call up front to the scorekeeper.
Yeah, you're allowed to decrease as long as the weight hadn't got to that weight yet.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can decrease if it hasn't got to that weight yet.
Gotcha.
You see, and so I can either decrease it or I can jump it up. Okay, and so there's lots of little tricks like that, and then you over the years of success, you almost develop an aura that they're looking for Coach Hatch. I mean, they will. Matt can testify to this. They will talk to Matt and say, "Where's Coach Hatch? You sure he's coming today? You know?" And Matt said, "He'll be here when the time's right. He'll be in this warm-up room." And sure enough, Coach Hatch walks in there.
I'll never forget after I think my first national championship I won. I obtained my medal and walked to the back to go see Coach, and he was already gone. I called him. He was in his car heading back home. He didn't stay for my medal.
They got so used to that. We had one announcer, and I did just like I do that. I remember it was Blair's meeting. He did that and was going to get his medal, but the announcer said, "Coach Hatch has left the building."
Any other, looking back now, if you could tell yourself one thing as an early coach that you know now that you didn't then, what would that be?
Well, I think that the thing about it is that I was so fortunate. Alvin Roy started out training me, and I learned some of the Olympic lifts, and also I learned about strength and conditioning. And so I took that, but we also had a man going to LSU by the name of Louis Rickey. And Louis was really one of the nicest guys in the world, and he was an Olympian. He's from New Orleans, and he snatched a world record in 1964. So I was around both of these men, so I got a lot of information on strength and conditioning, and I got the information on Olympic lifting, and they were, both of them was real nice. And the environment I was in, what's so ironic about this award I'm receiving, in 1955, I was in Alvin Roy's first strength and conditioning program, but there wasn't a lot of information like there is today to read. I was fortunate that I had an engineer in New Orleans named Pete Taluta, a brilliant man, that he could translate the Russian training methods and the Eastern European training methods, and then he would get them to me and let me study that. So I wish that at that time I had all the information that is available today. But you know something I try to teach my lifters? That too much information you got to be careful of, because you got this one over here teaching this, you got this one over here teaching this, you read this guy's doing this, and so I have to teach them how to read. And when they read and they say, "Oh, this is bull," they know how to read. You know, Matt Bruce is a purist. There's nobody, including my strength coaches, that can teach the Hatch system as well as Matt Bruce. He follows it to a T, and he's already got his first protege, Klein. You're going to hear a lot about him, and we expect him to make it junior world team this year and follow in Matt's footsteps and go on to be a great lifter. Well, that's what he has him on. He has him on the hat system to the T.
So, Coach, let's go back a little bit. So you read all the Russian, Bulgarian training manuals, and then you tried to apply it to your lifters. Do you see immediate success? Was there a learning curve there for you? How did that work?
Well, Matt, that's a great question. What I did was I had the 70s to use at the YMCA when I came back from playing basketball. The Y wasn't that far from me. I'd go down there and train. There was a lifter there by the name of Walter Emmeher who won 5 national championships, and he was training for the '68 Olympic team. And that's where I got the idea about starting a junior Olympic team. But I would watch him train and ask questions. But I would take a little bit of what I read from the Russians and put it in there, try that for a while. Then I would go, say, to more of a Bulgarian style training method, put that in a while, then maybe the poles. And then keeping good close records and just an old notebook like this, I could say, well, this worked good here, this worked good here, this wasn't too good, this, that. So I took a little bit of the best from the Russian, a little bit best from the Bulgarian, what I learned from Alvin Roy and Louis Ricky, and put it all together. And it took me about to 78 or 9 before I really had what we call the hat system. And the first lifter that came along then, I'd put one lifter, Wade Sparks, on the junior world team too, Randy DeLaw in 1974. And then after that, 1979, Tommy Calandra came along, and he fit the perfect model. I mean, he had the toughness, he had the structure, and I just flat told him, son, if you listen to me and train hard and don't miss any workouts, you can make the '84 Olympic team. And he believed in me. And so, we did it. And so you could say I took a little from the Russians, a little from the Bulgarians, a little from the Poles, from Alvin, from Ricky, put it all together, what worked best, experiment with those teams. I've got to give a lot of credit to our first successful lifter. Back then they had 3 lifts, the press and the snatch and the clean and jerk, instead of just the snatch and the clean and jerk. And Charlie Hurd was my first big-time lifter, and I can remember when he first weighing in about weighing around 200 pounds, first pressed 300 pounds. That was a very impressive lift for back in those days. And so we owe a lot to, I tease them and call them my guinea pigs. But in effect, that's what they were, to use these different type of systems and experiment with them to come along and develop what is now known as the hat system.
Right. And is it possible to articulate some of the things, like the specific things that you pulled from each of those programs without having to look at numbers?
Well, they're really so different. I mean, let's just start with a warm-up. The warm-ups with the Russian, they go pretty extensive warm-up. I mean, they might have 30 minutes or so. The Bulgarians, they sit down on a bench and smoke a cigarette and throw it to the side and get up and grab the barbell and start warming up. That's their warm-up. So that's 2 extremes, Of course, they all get that steroid shot first, too, But I became a student of the Bulgarian great coach, and he's mad. He's missing some screws. But Abijay, and I studied every type of workout he had, because in Bulgaria, there was one way and one way only, and that was Abkhazia. And it's a smaller country. But then in Russia, you had several great coaches around the country with training centers like that. And so theirs might be a little bit different, but still pretty strict to the Russian style. And so I would study all of these guys. And then I would say the biggest thing for myself is that staying in the eye of the storm. In other words, Matt, Tommy, Brett, all these guys, they never had a workout without me being right there to supervise every set and every rep that they took. They could have be a fingernail off on a lift, and it would cause them to miss it. Well, they're not going to be able to pick that up, that they're just a fingernail off. I'll tell them, Matt, you didn't finish your pull. You were a fingernail off on it. Let's get back in here and finish it completely this time. He comes back and he hits it. So being in the eye of the storm and supervising every set and every rep is very big. There's a lot of coaches come in, they write the workout on the board, and then they're gone. You know, you can't do it. My strength coaches are still scared. I'm telling you right now, because I tell them, you know, if I walk in on you and you're in your office and you got that telephone up on your ear and you're selling vitamins or something somewhere, and you're going to get your ass chewed out by me.
So, Coach, going back to your style of programming, we hear a lot on the internet about the hatch squat program.
Right.
The hatches lifters always had the
strongest, best leg strength. That's right.
Can you elaborate? Why do you feel your program has developed such solid foundation and leg strength with your athletes?
I think so, man. I think it's one thing that a lot of these people don't understand out there. Now, there's different variations of the hatch squat program, and you can find them on the internet. You might have Mike's gym have one version. You might have Joe's gym another version. Only you know the true version. But what is false information out there is that we only squat once a week, and that's technically what you should be saying is we work legs every day. Now, starting off on a Monday, we do what is called an overhead squat. And we got a guy this man's size, it's 185 pounds, that can hold up close to 400 pounds over his head in the snatch grip position and do 3 deep squats holding that. Now, I actually call that a total body squat, because I can take you to a lot of universities and you get a 340-pound lineman can't even put 400 pounds on his back and squat it correctly, much less hold it over his head and do 3 reps with it. Then on Tuesday, we come back with something that is very unusual. It's a combination of front squats and back squats together. One squat workout, we may go heavy triples in the front squat and only medium heavy in the back squat. But even when we go medium heavy, we do 5 reps on those. When you hit that 5th rep, it doesn't feel medium heavy, it feels heavy.
Yep.
Then the following squat workout, we reverse that. We go heavy triples in the back squat and medium heavy in the front squat.
So why don't you do both on the same day? That
is a system that I had told you that I went through with the guinea pigs.
Yep.
That I tried and tried to try.
And that just
I came up with that.
That would develop the fastest.
That developed the strongest.
Mm-hmm.
But then on Wednesday, it's still another leg day. We do either step ups, which was Warwick Dunn's favorite lift, and Warwick weighed 185 pounds, and he could squat 500.
Yep.
But step ups was his favorite because of the running motion,
Right.
using each legs, or single-legged squats, sort of a lunge type movement.
Yeah, Coach, don't get confused. Some CrossFitters see a single-legged squat, and they'll try to squat on a single leg. What Coach is actually referring to is like a more of a Russian or Bulgarian split squat.
Split squat.
Like a lunge with a weight
Right.
behind the back.
You can put your toe in the back. You can have 1 or 2 plates up. You solid your toe in the back, and then you're stepping up on a box 13, 15, 16, 18 inches
Yep.
And, you get 5 reps there, and then you switch legs, you get 5 reps the other way. And I had to have that box out there, number 1 box reinforced for Blair,
Yeah.
because he got so strong. I was worried about, I could see it in my mind, oh Lord, the legs going through. But then, Wednesday's kind of a lighter squat day. In the beginning, we'll have the lifters lift and maybe just do some back squats, medium. But then Friday, man, that's our heavy clean and jerk day. We're doing cleans and jerks is heavy. Then I have an exercise which is called clean jerks. He's got Paler right there. When I say clean jerks, he got Paler. Where you clean the weight down in the bottom position and then you come straight up into the jerk.
So basically imagine it like a thruster, but going, instead of like into a press, it's into a jerk.
Yeah.
And you would be able to work up to like close to 85% of your
85%.
best
That's what
clean
I'm
and jerk. And so imagine trying to do a thruster with that, but instead just splitting into the jerk instead of trying to make it into a press.
That works the heck out of those legs. Plus sometimes, instead of doing 2 cleans and 1 jerk, or 3 cleans and 2 jerks, I'll have them do 3 squat cleans and 1 jerk. That's working the hell out of the legs.
Right.
So that's 5 days we're doing leg work. And Matt always liked to fool his teammates on these international teams, and they ask him, well, man, how y'all get that leg? How many days a week do y'all squat? And he said, well, just once.
I was being honest though.
But he was being honest. But we're working legs, a different application to leg work every single day. Yes,
And I've seen a few people start the Hatch program, and then pretty quickly it just beats them up. So how do you prevent that?
But we start them out at 12 or 13 years old, and we developing them taking this type of load that we have. And so it gradually increases over the time. In fact, as a junior, the volume may get up to a higher point than it does when you reach that elite level that Matt and them reach. The volume might come down. When I'm talking to volume, we count volume in repetition. So he might be doing up to 21,000 in some part of his cycle, and then when he gets into his peak years, we cut out a lot of the assistant exercises, and his volume may drop down to 17, but there were the key exercises, and the intensity is higher.
Right.
Coach, I hear you talk about dealing with like a beginner or intermediate athlete. You always talk about benchmarks. Can you explain that a little bit better?
Yes, benchmarks instead of percentages is something that's very important in our program. Like if we start out with a beginner who's 12 or 13 years old, and if he can reach we're going to do 5. We'll say we'll do a warm-up set, 4 sets of 5. His last set of 5 reps, whether it's 150 pounds or whatever it is, when he hits that, then the following workout, his new benchmark is 155 on his last set of back squats. Now, when he gets up to 155, he might only get 3 or 4. So he'll be doing 5, 5, 5, 5, 3. We stay with that until he can get up to his last set and he makes 5. Then we jump it up 5 more pounds to 160. And that's his new benchmark.
Right.
And we can do that on jerks, cleans, snatches, but we don't get any higher than triples on that because technique breaks down. With the young guys, we can go 4 reps, first few workouts, maybe 5, but usually we get them down to 3 pretty quick. We don't get them to doubles and singles for a while. And I'm going to tell you what, Matt, without question, just like the rest of these guys, had the strongest legs in the nation, pound for pound, and I never had him do a single in his life.
What does that do?
What it does is this. And I've been doing this so long that I know if he can triple a certain amount of weight, if he can double a certain amount of weight, hell, I know what his best single is.
Right.
I don't have to have him take a chance of taking a single, and
Fail.
injuring the back or injuring the knee, that's silly. I know one thing, whenever I tell him to go out there and lift, he's going to clean it.
Right.
See?
Yeah.
And that's where the real test is what can he squat clean, you see?
And so the only thing you ever have your athletes max out on, a true 1 rep max, is the snatch and the clean and jerk, right?
Yeah, that's right. And then don't forget about our segment program. I might start Matt out having him triple up. I don't start counting repetitions in their program till we hit 70%. And then, he might be scheduled to triple up to 85%, double 90%. And then I take a look at that and I decide whether he's going to 95% for a single. If he's for some reason having an off day or had a cold or something, he didn't look that good, well, I'll hold him at 90% for a couple of sets. Whereas Brett's training next to him, this happened to be his real good day. Well, I might bring him up to 95% and then 100%. So that's what is called the art of coaching. You have to be out there to make that decision, because the next week it may be Brett that's got the cold and Matt feels on fire. So you have to make these decisions for these guys,
Right.
And that's how you prevent injuries, and that's how you keep the progress moving, and that's what it's all about. Yeah.
I love it. There's a lot of, obviously, everyone thinks their program is the best program. The Bulgarians, the Russians, some U.S. coaches even. What do you think, and I've heard you say it before, everybody's snatching and clean and jerking, everybody's squatting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're doing the same movements. What is it, and you might have already answered this, but what is it that makes the best of the best? What are those intangibles, or what are the things in a program that make these best athletes, the Olympians?
It's how you manipulate the volume and intensity. That's one real important thing. And so you set up with cycle training, or periodization is used. So you may have a 4-week cycle where you go 3 weeks heavy, unload on that 4th week, and then start over again. Or then you may have a 6-week cycle where you train heavy 2 weeks, unload, train heavy 2 more weeks, unload, and then at the end of that 6th week, you can take a total on them. But a lot of our cycles they're made for us, because if we have a meet this Saturday, then we have a meet 5 weeks from now. That's going to be our cycle to the next meet. If it's 6 or 7 weeks off, then that's our cycle. See? So we break that up. But you got, even during the heavy weeks, if we say we have 3 weeks heavy, you even have to have that broken down to, well, we can start easy: light heavy, medium heavy, max heavy, then unload. Then you could come back with medium heavy, light heavy, and max load. So even within those heavy weeks, there's a little bit of percentage difference in the heavy days, in the heavy weeks. And then you have then you got the hatch assistant exercises that we use. And sometimes I can pull one out. It's just in there. I'll pull it out to throw it in there to doing something adjustable. The little guy, one of my little knots, Mike Weiss, one that he did not mind at all, I could make him take the bar off of the rack, squat all the way down, and do snatch grip presses for 3 reps. And I had a big super heavyweight that was an American Open champion, Dean Simpson, and when he heard me say, break it down to the empty bar, he would almost start yelling. He would rather me say, Dean, put 7 reds on each side of the bar, than for me to say, break it down, because he knew it was going to be an uncomfortable lift. But you have to hit these uncomfortable lifts to develop that strength and that flexibility in these different parts.
Mm-hmm. I got 2 more questions for you before we wrap up. One, is it true that Matt walked in here and he had 2 straight legs, and then over the years, as he could squat heavier and heavier, he developed a bowed leg? Is that how it happened?
To be honest with you, it really worked out for him, because at Christmas time, he dresses up as an elf, and he goes over to the mall, and he helps Santa Claus, and he's got his little elf outfit on.
What does that have to do with bow legs?
And I'm telling you,
Answer the question.
I've seen him make $5,000 for Christmas time just with his elf uniform. I wouldn't be a bit surprised, since he had this tree fall on his house, that Tatiana doesn't have to pull that elf uniform out this Christmas.
A little extra cash.
No, but I'll tell you something about the bowed leg, that another lifter of mine, Brett Bryan, had slightly bowed legs like Matt. Tommy had straight legs, Blair had straight legs, but Brett and Blair had slightly bowed legs. In fact, I started calling you off Junior Wham, didn't I?
That was my nickname, Junior Wham.
Junior Wham.
Brett Bryan.
And then that transferred into the man in the white shirt, because everywhere he went, I don't care what it was, LSU football game, Calico, whatever, he had a Gale Hatch white shirt on. Well, that just shows you the dedication he had to his team and to his coach, and it's paid off for him. I'm very, very proud of him, and he's going to be very successful in life. And let me tell you something, I don't want to forget this. You got to have a good woman. I was very fortunate. I was, I was a little rough around the edges when I was started off in high school and college, and then I met Peggy. We became college sweethearts, and she was a straight A student and a good girl. She kind of took the rough edges off of me. She's worked the score table from the local meets all the way to the world championships, and the team loves her, and so it helps to have a good woman behind you. And that goes for your lifters too. You get a girlfriend that understands you got to go and get your workout in, that's great. You get a girlfriend that says, "Oh, you don't need to go today. Coach Hatch won't mind if you missed a day. No. Why don't we do this and that?" That's what we call luggage. Get rid of that luggage. Find one that understands what you're doing, what your goals are, what your dreams are, and support you.
Right. And that for any goal we have, we need somebody to support us like that, right?
Absolutely correct. Anything in life.
Well, I love it. Thank you, Coach. This has been great. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Great. Thank you.